Welcome to our journey through the fascinating evolution of modern television, a medium that has profoundly shaped our understanding of history and culture. Television has been a constant companion in our homes for decades, bringing the world to our living rooms and connecting us through shared experiences. The story of television is not merely about technological innovation, but about how a simple device transformed the way we perceive reality and understand our world. Throughout this narrative, we will explore how television evolved from a novelty item to an essential cultural force that documents, interprets, and sometimes even creates history before our very eyes. The relationship between television and modern history is deeply intertwined, as television both records historical moments and influences their outcomes. From presidential debates that changed election results to live broadcasts of world-changing events, television has been both a witness and participant in the unfolding drama of human history. This electronic window to the world has compressed time and space, allowing viewers to experience events happening thousands of miles away in real time, creating a new kind of global consciousness. Through its powerful combination of images, sound, and storytelling, television has shaped our collective memory and understanding of the past century in ways no previous medium could achieve. Before television entered our homes, news traveled slowly, and our understanding of distant events was limited by what we could read in newspapers or hear on the radio. The introduction of television dramatically altered this reality, creating an unprecedented level of immediacy and visual connection to world events. As television sets became more affordable and widespread in the 1950s and 1960s, families gathered around these glowing screens to witness history unfolding. The power of television to bring distant realities into intimate domestic spaces fundamentally changed how people engaged with current events and historical moments. This transformation was not just technological, but psychological, as it altered human perception of time, distance, and community in profound ways. Television's role in documenting history has evolved significantly over the decades. From the carefully edited newsreels of the early era to today's 24-hour news cycles and streaming platforms, each technological advancement brought new capabilities and challenges to how history was presented and preserved. The introduction of color broadcasting in the 1960s made historical footage more vivid and impactful, while satellite technology allowed for instantaneous global transmission of events. Later developments in digital technology transformed both production and consumption of historical content, democratizing access to historical footage and expanding the range of perspectives available to viewers. These technological shifts have continuously reshaped how we experience, remember, and interpret historical events. The significance of television in modern history extends far beyond its role as a passive recorder of events, as it has actively shaped cultural attitudes, political movements, and social change. Television brought the civil rights movement into American living rooms, making visible the struggles that many preferred not to see. It carried the horrors of war from Vietnam to household televisions, influencing public opinion and political decisions. Through entertainment programming, television has both reflected and influenced changing social norms around gender, race, family structure, and countless other aspects of daily life. As we continue our exploration, we'll discover how this powerful medium has not just documented history, but has itself become an essential part of the historical narrative of the modern age. The birth of television marked a revolutionary moment in human communication, though its origins were more humble than many realize. The concept of transmitting moving images electrically began taking shape in the late 19th century, building upon earlier technologies like the telegraph and telephone. experiments by inventors such as Paul Nipkow, John Logie Baird, and Philo. Farnsworth gradually refined the technology throughout the early 20th century. The first public television broadcasts began in the 1930s, with very limited programming and reach. These early broadcasts were often experimental in nature, with technical limitations that seem primitive by today's standards. The screens were small, the images blurry, and programming was limited to a few hours a day. Yet the magic of seeing moving images transmitted through the air captivated early adopters. World War II temporarily halted the commercial development of television, but the post-war economic boom created perfect conditions for its rapid expansion. The 1950s saw television transform from a luxury item to a standard household appliance across much of the Western world. This period witnessed the establishment of major networks and broadcasting standards that would shape the medium for decades to come. In the United States, NBC, CBS, and ABC emerged as dominant forces, while in Europe, public broadcasting services like the BBC set the tone for television development. The personalities who pioneered television news became trusted national figures, with journalists like Edward R. Murrow establishing standards of integrity and seriousness that defined the medium's approach to reporting world events. Television's technological evolution continued at a remarkable pace, with each advancement expanding its capabilities as a historical medium. The transition from black and white to color broadcasting in the 1960s and 1970s dramatically enhanced the visual impact of television news and documentary programming. The introduction of videotape recording transformed production methods and allowed for more sophisticated editing of news footage. Satellite technology, beginning with Telstar in 1962, enabled live broadcasts from around the world, fundamentally changing the speed and scope of international news coverage. These technological developments coincided with some of the most tumultuous historical periods of the 20th century, allowing television to document civil rights movements, political assassinations, the space race, and the Vietnam War with unprecedented immediacy. The figures who pioneered television journalism played crucial roles in establishing its credibility and impact as a historical medium. Anchors like Walter Cronkite in America became known as the most trusted man in America, while documentarians like Ken Burns developed new approaches to presenting historical narratives. These television journalists did not merely report on events, but often shaped how those events were understood by the public. The editorial decisions they made about what footage to show, which stories to highlight, and how to frame historical narratives had profound implications for public perception. The power of television personalities was demonstrated most dramatically during events like the Kennedy-Nixon debates, where Nixon's poor television appearance likely contributed to his electoral defeat. The relationship between television executives, government officials, and historical events was often complex and sometimes controversial. In many countries, governments recognized the power of television and sought to control its content, while network executives balanced journalistic integrity with commercial and political pressures. This tension played out differently across various political systems, with state-controlled television in authoritarian regimes, contrasting sharply with the commercial model dominant in the United States. Even in democracies, questions about television's responsibility to national security versus public transparency created ongoing debates. These institutional dynamics influenced how historical events were presented to the public, sometimes limiting coverage of controversial topics, and other times providing unprecedented access to momentous events as they unfolded. Television's cultural impact reached its zenith during what many call the Golden Age, a period when the medium's influence on society was at its most profound. This era, roughly spanning from the 1950s through the 1970s, saw television become the central storytelling medium in many societies. Programs like I Love Lucy, The Twilight Zone, and M.A.S.H. not only entertained, but reflected and shaped cultural attitudes about family, technology, and war. The shared experience of watching these programs created a collective cultural vocabulary that crossed geographic and sometimes social boundaries. Television's ability to create these shared cultural touchpoints represented a historically unprecedented form of mass communication, one that could instantly reach millions with the same message. The golden age of television coincided with some of the most significant historical events of the 20th century, creating a powerful synergy between the medium and the message. The civil rights movement in America was profoundly influenced by television coverage that brought images of peaceful protesters being attacked with fire hoses and police dogs into living rooms across the nation. The assassination of President Kennedy and the subsequent killing of Lee Harvey Oswald live on television created a national trauma experienced collectively through the medium. The Vietnam War became known as the First Television War, with nightly news broadcasts bringing battlefield footage directly to the public in an unprecedented way. These historical moments were not just reported by television, but were fundamentally shaped by how television presented them to the world. Television's role in documenting the Cold War deserves special attention, as the medium became both a battlefield and a bridge during this tense period. American and Soviet television each presented their own version of global events, reflecting competing ideologies and worldviews. The space race in particular became a televised competition that captivated audiences on both sides of the Iron Curtain. Television broadcasts of the Apollo moon landing reached an estimated 600 million viewers worldwide, making it one of the most watched events in human history. This shared viewing experience temporarily transcended political divisions, creating a rare moment of global unity. Meanwhile, political leaders like Kennedy, Nixon, and Reagan mastered the use of television to communicate Cold War messages to both domestic and international audiences. The rise of television personalities who interpreted historical events for the public created a new kind of cultural authority. News anchors like Walter Cronkite, Barbara Walters, and Danny rather became trusted guides to understanding complex world events. Their personal credibility often exceeded that of political leaders, as demonstrated when Cronkite's skeptical reporting on the Vietnam War reportedly led President Johnson to remark, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America." Fan Ro. Documentary. Filmmakers like Ken Burns and historical dramatists brought the past to life through innovative storytelling techniques that made history accessible and engaging. These television personalities did not merely report history, but helped shape how it was understood and remembered by the public. Television's power to create historical narratives was not limited to news and documentaries, but extended to fictional programming that addressed historical themes. Shows like Roots confronted America with the legacy of slavery in ways that academic histories rarely could, reaching massive audiences and sparking national conversations. Historical dramas and miniseries became increasingly sophisticated in their approach to the past, often combining entertainment with genuine historical insight. Programs like The World at War set new standards for historical documentation, using archival footage, interviews with participants, and thoughtful narration to create comprehensive accounts of historical events. These programs demonstrated television's unique capacity to combine visual evidence, personal testimony, and narrative structure, to create compelling historical accounts that reached audiences far beyond those who would read traditional historical texts. As television matured as a medium, it increasingly became a window through which viewers could witness world events in real time, fundamentally changing the relationship between the public and historical moments. The introduction of satellite technology in the 1960s enabled truly global broadcasting, allowing audiences to witness events happening on the other side of the world as they occurred. This technological leap compressed time and space in unprecedented ways, creating what media scholar Marshall McLuhan called a global village. Events like the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 were experienced collectively by hundreds of millions of viewers worldwide, creating shared historical memories that transcended national boundaries. This capacity to witness history collectively represented a fundamental shift in how societies experienced momentous events. Television's coverage of political crises and transitions created new dynamics between leaders and citizens. The televised debates between Kennedy and Nixon in 1960 demonstrated how the medium could influence electoral outcomes, with Kennedy's telegenic appearance contrasting with Nixon's uncomfortable demeanor. Watergate hearings brought the complex scandal directly into American homes, building public pressure that ultimately led to Nixon's resignation. The Iranian hostage crisis became a nightly fixture on American television, with ABC's Nightline program originally created to provide updates on the situation. These political moments were not just covered by television, but were fundamentally shaped by the medium's presence, as politicians increasingly had to consider how their actions would appear on the evening news. Natural disasters and humanitarian crises took on new dimensions when broadcast to global audiences. Television coverage of famines in Ethiopia in the 1980s sparked unprecedented international aid efforts, demonstrating the medium's power to mobilize compassion across borders. Coverage of events like Hurricane Katrina revealed social inequalities that might otherwise have remained less visible to broader audiences. These broadcasts often raised complex ethical questions about the responsibilities of journalists and viewers when confronted with human suffering. Should cameras show the most disturbing images to motivate action, or was this exploitation? How did the selection of which disasters received coverage reflect underlying biases? Television's role in mediating these crises created new forms of global consciousness about human vulnerability and interconnection. Behind the scenes, television news operations developed increasingly sophisticated approaches to covering breaking historical events. Network news divisions established bureaus around the world to provide on-the-ground reporting from global hotspots. New technologies like portable video cameras allowed for more nimble coverage in dangerous or remote locations. The competitive pressure to be first with breaking news sometimes led to compromises in accuracy or context, creating tensions between speed and thoroughness. These institutional and technological factors shaped how historical events were presented to the public, often in ways invisible to viewers. The decisions about which stories deserved coverage, how much airtime they received, and how they were framed had profound implications for public understanding of world events. The rise of 24-hour news channels in the 1980s, beginning with CNN, fundamentally changed television's relationship to history. These channels needed to fill constant airtime, creating both opportunities for in-depth coverage and pressures to dramatize events to maintain viewer interest. During the Gulf War in 1991, CNN's live coverage from Baghdad provided unprecedented access to a conflict as it unfolded, creating what some called the CNN effect on military and diplomatic decision-making. This continuous news environment altered the rhythms of public attention, sometimes allowing for sustained focus on important stories, but also creating shorter attention spans and a hunger for constant updates. The acceleration of the news cycle changed how events were processed in public consciousness, often moving on to new stories before the implications of previous events had been fully understood. Television's analytical role in helping audiences make sense of complex historical developments became increasingly important as the pace of global change accelerated. Programs like Nightline, Frontline, and various documentary series provided context and perspective that daily news coverage often lacked. These programs brought together experts, witnesses, and decision-makers to examine events from multiple angles, creating more nuanced understanding. The best television analysis transcended simple narratives to reveal underlying patterns and connections between seemingly disparate events. This analytical function became especially crucial during periods of rapid change, such as the collapse of communist regimes in Eastern Europe, when viewers needed help understanding the historical significance of fast-moving developments. The evolution of television has been accompanied by fascinating technological developments that transformed not just how we watch but what we watch. The shift from analog to digital broadcasting opened new possibilities for visual quality and channel capacity. Cable and satellite television fractured the mass audience into smaller niche markets, with specialized channels for news, history, science, and countless other interests. This fragmentation had profound implications for the shared cultural experience that characterized television's earlier decades. The remote control, a seemingly minor innovation, fundamentally changed viewing habits by enabling channel surfing and reduced attention spans. VCRs and later DVRs gave viewers unprecedented control over when and how they watched programs, beginning the shift from scheduled broadcasting to on-demand viewing that would accelerate in the digital age. The rise of reality television in the oil islands late 1990s and early 2000s created new relationships between television and actual events. Shows like Survivor, Big Brother, and The Amazing Race blurred the lines between documentation and entertainment in ways that influenced broader television conventions. These programs created their own artificial realities that nonetheless generated genuine emotional responses and social dynamics. The public's fascination with these shows reflected changing attitudes about privacy, authenticity, and the value of ordinary experience. While critics dismissed reality TV as mindless entertainment, these programs often revealed significant cultural attitudes and social behaviors that future historians might find illuminating about our era. The digital revolution that began in the early 2000s fundamentally transformed television's relationship to history and memory. Streaming services like Netflix, YouTube, and later Disney Plus and HBO Max created vast archives of historical content, available on demand. This shift from broadcasting's ephemeral nature to permanent digital accessibility changed how viewers engaged with historical material. Simultaneously, social media platforms like Twitter became integrated with television viewing, creating real-time commentary and discussion around breaking news events. This convergence of television with digital technologies created new forms of public engagement with historical moments, allowing for instant reaction and collective interpretation. The digital environment also facilitated the preservation and sharing of television archives, making historical broadcasts more accessible than ever before. As we look to the future, television's role in documenting and interpreting history continues to evolve in response to technological and social changes. The boundaries between television and other media continue to blur, with platforms like YouTube and TikTok creating new forms of video documentation and storytelling. Artificial intelligence and advanced data visualization are opening new possibilities for presenting complex historical information in accessible ways. Virtual and augmented reality technologies hold promise for creating immersive historical experiences that go beyond traditional documentary approaches. Despite these changes, television's fundamental capacity to provide visual evidence of events, combined with narrative context, ensures its continuing importance as a historical medium. As we navigate an increasingly complex information landscape, the critical viewing skills developed through engagement with television history become more important than ever. In conclusion, television has transformed from a novel invention to an essential medium through which we experience, remember, and understand history. Its evolution reflects broader technological and social changes, while its content provides invaluable documentation of the modern era. From the golden age of network television to today's fragmented digital landscape, the medium continues to shape our collective memory and historical consciousness. As viewers, we have witnessed countless historical moments through this electronic window, creating shared experiences that transcend individual perspectives. Television has both recorded history and made history, influencing events even as it documented them. This dual role makes television not just a subject for historical study, but an essential source for understanding the modern world. As we navigate an increasingly complex media environment, the lessons learned from television's rich history offer valuable insights for thoughtful engagement with visual media in all its forms.